Victoria Arlen's life drastically changed in 2006 at the tender age of 11 when she developed two rare conditions known as transverse myelitis and acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. This was an incredibly rare scenario, and Victoria quickly lost the ability to speak, eat, walk, and move. She slipped into a vegetative state in which doctors had written her off as a lost cause. Victoria spent nearly 4 years locked inside her own body, completely aware of what was going on, just unable to move or communicate. Doctors believed there was little hope of survival and recovery was unlikely. Victoria, however, was not ready to give up. In 2010, after almost 4 years, she began the nearly impossible fight back to life, learning how to speak, eat, and move all over again. Victoria went on to exceedingly defy the odds and not only recovered, but has since become an accomplished motivational speaker, a contestant on the popular show Dancing with the Stars, and a celebrated swimmer. Her swimming resume includes 3 silvers and a gold medal from the London 2012 Paralympic Games, as well as multiple world, American, and Pan-American records.
At the age of 10, you started experiencing an array of health problems, and before you know it, you were unable to speak, walk, move, and you were soon diagnosed with 2 rare disorders, transverse myelitis and acute disseminated endocephalitis. It's our handful.
No, it's a mouthful. So it's transverse myelitis. You nailed it. I still don't pronounce it right, so I'm gonna give it a whirl right now. It's acute disseminated encephalomyelitis.
Okay, we're gonna use your words.
Well, it's so crazy because like that definition and that pronunciation, every single interview I've done, everyone does it a little differently. Yeah. Everyone pronounces it a little differently. And then I started questioning how it was pronounced. And then I broke it down to encephalomyelitis. So some people go like encephalo or cephamylo, and I'm like, no, it's encephalomyelitis.
Encephalomyelitis. Okay, and acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. Can you tell us? Perfect.
Killed it.
Yeah, good. Can you tell us what happened and how all of a sudden you had these 2 disorders, or you were diagnosed, and then you actually went into a vegetative state for 4 years?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't have any health issues leading up to this. And then in 2005, I just started getting sick every other week, but I would always bounce back. And so I feel like my doctors and my parents, like no one thought anything of it. They're like, well, that's weird. Like Victoria's in the doctor's office again. But it was like pneumonia. It was the flu. It was fainting spells as a result of the flu or as a result of pneumonia. And so it was always just an array of things, but I always would bounce back. And then so this went on for a good 8 months. And then in April of 2006, I woke up with this horrible pain on my right side and a lot of flu-like symptoms. And then that was kind of the start of all that happened. And then within 3 months, I lost every motor skill and slipped into a vegetative state. And so they came on like a freight train. You don't normally get both conditions. Normally, the transverse myelitis affects your spine, so it causes spinal cord injury. The encephalomyelitis causes a brain injury. It affects your brain. So I got both. And so by the time doctors put 2 and 2 together and figured it out, I was what they call a lost cause. And they basically told my parents, she's not going to make it. And if she does make it, the Victoria you once knew is never coming back.
That's really tough.
And I was aware the whole time. And I was like, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you, it's obviously the situation clearly is very unfortunate. Where you are now in your life is very remarkable. But going back to that, so you were aware of your surroundings, and you could talk, quote unquote, in your head. But a lot of people probably don't understand what that means. So what does it mean for you to have been locked in for these 4 years?
So locked in basically means you can see and hear, but you can't communicate. And so the doctors didn't realize that I was still in there. So I was literally locked inside my own body.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's right. And so then you also had a mixture of seizures and other complications. You also had a feeding tube. So it was pretty, it wasn't just, oh, I'm just lying on, the bed. Um,
Yeah,
it was very intense,
yes,
quote
very
unquote.
intense.
So when you came out of your vegetative state, what was the process like? You mentioned that the first indicator to your mom specifically was blinking.
Yeah.
But how did that process of then speaking and starting to eat on your own transpire? I know walking, that was a whole other realm that
Yeah.
happened later on in life, later on. But yeah, and how long was that process? I mean, it was obviously not just 2 days. It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
um,
It was a very long process. Long to me, I think. But after the blinking and I was communicating through that and through signing, I started doing like intense therapies, and that really kind of helped. Kind of because I knew what I wanted to say. Like my brain was completely intact, so I knew I could grab that glass of water. I knew I could hold my head up. I knew I could say a million things, but my body wasn't making the connections. So was really a process of retraining my body how to do all these things that it knows how to do, but the muscles and everything are a little, are very weak and very atrophied. And so it was a good, I'd say, 6 months of around the clock, work to get to a point where I could sit up in a wheelchair on my own. I could wheel my wheelchair around. I could have a conversation. I could kind of find that sense of independence and not feel like I was as heavily, relying on people to kind of help me with day-to-day tasks.
right. No. Yeah, absolutely. And did you work with speech therapists? Obviously OT, PT, or occupational, physical therapists. But so when it came to your speech, it wasn't all like, oh, got it right back.
No, I probably worked the most with the speech therapist because there was also the issue of swallowing. And there was also being able to communicate, have conversations. So I think that was a big one because I think that was the most frustrating was when I couldn't talk and when I was trying to talk. So I worked with speech therapy like 3 or 4 times a week
Yeah.
and then would do exercises at home. I'm one of four, so I have three brothers who are helping me out with that. My parents were helping me out with that. So I feel like, yes, I would go to therapy, a couple hours a day, but then I would come home and continue that therapy and continue kind of those exercises and stuff because I really was just determined to kind of get back in the game.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it, but your stamina and bravery and perseverance is quite remarkable.
Thank you.
And I mean that like wholeheartedly. I think you're stronger than I am, and I'm very brave and very, I persevere, and we'll get into that. So you fortunately have overcome a lot of your obstacles. You've regained back your life. Are there any residual effects that you still have as a result of being sick?
Yeah, so I can't feel my legs, still can't feel them. Vision, I have issues with vision, so I actually wear glasses probably 90% of the time, or I'm supposed to wear them 100% of the time, but I forget. So vision is an issue. I think I still deal with a lot of spasms and neuro flare ups. But those are all. I mean, I can deal with all of that given everything else I've gone through.
Right.
I do have to maintain a very healthy, active lifestyle to keep my legs going and to keep my health going. I have to really watch out, because the conditions I have are autoimmune based. So especially during this COVID time, right away, my doctors were like, you need to hunker down and you need to, really take quarantining and social distancing and wearing your mask like seriously, because we don't know, with your underlying conditions. Plus, I have severe asthma, what that could be. So I think I've always had to be extra conscientious of that. So the underlying, I mean, they're pebbles compared to the boulders I've had to push through, but they're still significant enough that I can't go a day where I'm like, oh, what happened to me? Like I get out of bed and I can't feel the floor beneath my feet, and I'm like, all right. But it's the greatest like humbling moment for me. And I remember when I first was kind of dealing with this whole famous world, my mom was like so nervous, and because she had seen, there's a lot of egos, people go crazy and get really caught up in it, and really, fixated, especially when I moved to LA, fixated on that materialistic world and whatnot, and forget what it's all about. And I remember having this conversation, and I was like, Mom, like, every morning I wake up and I put my feet on the ground and I can't feel the ground, instantly humbles me. So even if there was a moment where I, floated off and was thinking, I'm the coolest, which I never think that way. So I'd be shocked even if I ever did think that way. I'd be like, do you have a fever? Are you okay? And I'm like, as soon as I put my feet on the ground, like I'm instantly reminded of all that I've overcome and the things that I'm still dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I personally, so if and when you meet me ever, I mean, you would know that I have, that my right arm is slightly postured and that I walk with a slight limp. Most people like you, I mean, would think now, obviously, since you've been walking, oh, like what's wrong? Like you look fine, like to
Yeah.
me. I definitely think, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, like I don't think about my injury. I have to be really, I mean, I obviously I'm very health conscious. I go to all my doctors, I take care of like sleeping, eating, all of that stuff. But like you said, I don't think it's something that like necessarily people understand. Oh yeah, that was just another day. Like,
Yeah.
okay. Like, no, you have to be really conscientious. I mean, even like with COVID, for instance. I'm in New York. Where are you based? You're in Connecticut?
Yeah, I'm in Connecticut.
Okay.
Mhm.
No,
But I
so I
was
don't know
based
what
in LA when it all went down. So then I
board. Okay.
came back east.
Okay. Yeah, no, no. And that's where your family is now. Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
that's where your
They're
family.
like 2 hours from me. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's good. And I'm 20 minutes from ESPN. So it's the best of both worlds.
Right.
My
No,
family's glad I'm not a 7 hour,
of course
drive or
not.
7 hour flight,
Yeah,
to
no,
go visit
absolutely.
them for Sunday family dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing to me. No, I was also just gonna say, like in New York State, people with medical conditions are eligible for the vaccine. I don't know what it's like in Connecticut yet, but I know that will be
Yeah. So I can't get the vaccine.
you can't?
No, so I can't have any vaccines which is a bummer,
Oh, okay, that's
because of,
interesting. I never thought of that.
yeah, so with my conditions, those can trigger relapses. Any type of, like if I have a surgery, I get a relapse. If I had a surgery back in September, my whole central nervous system shut down for 3 days. I had seizures for 3 days, and that was a surgery. So any type of stressor or foreign thing can set it off. And so years ago, they're like, you can't even have I was like, well, can I get like a flu shot? And they're like, no, we just don't know enough about these if they would just like trigger it to come back. And so as far as a vaccine goes, they're like, no, like you can't. Like, yes, it would be great if you could, but there's too much. I already have a rare scenario of the two, and I already have, it was one of the worst cases and then came out of it. People don't come out of this. People as bad as me either die or they're on a ventilator the rest of their life. And so they're like, you've already been the anomaly. We don't want to play with fire here.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. No, that's very, yeah, I would have never even thought about that. I don't think most people would have, but that just, goes to show that you really need to be extra cautious and like, let's hope that, life will resume to somewhat of a mode of normalcy in the
Yeah.
near future. But no, that's definitely, an extra challenge, especially since we're going through this crazy pandemic. Fortunately, you're safe and
Yeah.
all of that. But I resonate with, just having to take extra care of yourself. So when you experience these array of health problems at the age of 10, your mom, and obviously your parents, just in general, your dad too, took you to all these doctors for diagnosis to be diagnosed and so forth. The doctors, kind of like you said, wrote you off as a lost cause. They thought you were faking it. uh you know
Yeah, in the beginning they thought I was faking it, and then they missed a crucial treatment window.
mhm.
And then when they figured it all out, they're like, well, there's nothing we can do. She's going to die, or she's going to be a vegetable the rest of her life.
No, it will. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's how. I mean, that was the news that was broken to you and your parents. However, you have come to the other side and
Ta-da!
yeah, exactly, quote unquote, prove them wrong, which I've done too with certain things that my doctors have said about me. Uh, what now do you think, quote unquote, these doctors have learned about your case? Because you've beat the odds. Like,
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting because I found out years later that all that I went through could have been avoided by a round of steroids,
right,
like intense steroids. And the doctors didn't do that. So, but back in 2006, those two conditions weren't talked about. They weren't as well known as they are now. And so now people who get, TM or 8M or whatever, they get right away, airlifted to a neuro unit. They get put on steroids. There's a whole protocol in place. And people still aren't recovering, but yet they're not declining as quickly or having, 4-year long vegetative state. So it's interesting. I mean, I think only recently am I more outspoken in talking about it. But I think for a long time, and even still, I teeter with that, especially like just wanting to move on and wanting to kind of do my thing. And yes, I'll use my platform to bring awareness, but it's really I am an anomaly for sure. And so when people ask, well, what did you do or what did they do, I really don't talk a lot about that because I'm like, every case is so different and I'm not a doctor and even my doctors don't know and don't understand it. And, I believe, it was a miracle sent from Jesus himself. And I'm grateful for that. But, but it's not, I can't be the person who's like, well, this is what worked for me and it could work. We don't know that. I'm not an expert. Actually, someone sent me like a really scathing message. So I have like crazy privacy settings on my social media. There was this one dad who sent me this message, and I don't check, like, there's, for security purposes and stuff, I don't check messages that I haven't been approved to like see. I
right.
just don't, because
Uh-huh.
there's been threatening ones, there's been creepy ones, like
Of
it's not
course,
good for my mental
you're a
health.
celebrity, so I mean, I totally get it.
So this person ended up blowing up my social, and so I finally clicked and I was like, okay, what is going on? So his son had, I don't remember what they had. I think it was a similar condition. It was affecting their foot, but they got the right treatment. The son was walking and stuff, and he wrote me this message prior, which I hadn't seen, asking for advice, tips, all these things, and then came back and wrote this scathing like thing to me, like, I can't believe you wouldn't help us and all this stuff. And like wrote just this like call, like, completely, he was speaking from pure emotion, but it was one of those things where I was like, you are crossing a line, you are questioning my integrity, you are questioning, like, you are crossing a line here. And I get it, you're emotional, you're nervous, you want to help your person, but like, I'm not a doctor. And so I ended up responding and was like, with all due respect, like, this is very disrespectful what you're saying and how you're questioning. I am not a doctor. I am not an expert. I am simply, I've gone through this. I have shared what I've dealt with through my book and through, but that is it. Like, I am not, I didn't go to medical school. I am not at the liberty to share things that worked for me that may not work for you. I'm not going to step on a, on a soapbox and do that. At the end of the day, like, everybody's in their own lane, everybody's having their own thing. You have to have the right medical team, but every case is different. But like, I like, it really upset me because like, I didn't inherit, like, I didn't want to inherit this to then, I didn't sign up to be the expert. I didn't sign up to be, people's punching bag about it. Like, I went through it, but now I'm living my life, doing my thing and working. I will be a positive influence. I will share my story openly, but that's where I have to draw the line, because if I immerse myself into this too much or get too, if I wanted to, I would have gone to medical school,
Right,
and so I think that's been the thing, is like finding that fine line, and but also at the same time, like, encouraging people, like, every story is different. Pray for that miracle, believe in that miracle, but listen to your doctors. Listen, find what works for you. Yeah.
I agree, and you're not the only one to be confronted with quote unquote medical advice or wanting, wanting to hear your side of the story, want to be,
Yeah.
diagnosed and so forth.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not a doctor, and like, I get it, you're upset, and you're, and my thoughts and prayers are with you, but like, your son's in a good place, like, he's walking, he's
Right.
functioning, like, that's way better than most,
Yeah.
given the timetable. But like, yeah, and I feel like people get so, there's such a like self-serving aspect of it, where they're like, well, no, you need to help me. And I've dealt with that a lot with speaking too, where I'm like, I have to find that fine line where I'm not doing too much, or I'm not doing, because I need to keep myself like ready to go and energized and rested and rejuvenated. Like, I can't physically on my own help people, but like, my foundation can, my team at VVF can, like, that's why we started that. But like, me as a person, like, I have to protect, and as you do as well, you have to protect your peace, because otherwise, if you burn out,
Of course.
then that's not okay. Like, that's like, then you're no help to anyone.
No, absolutely. I mean, I also definitely take on sometimes too much that I've, did in the past where I've literally burned out emotionally. And I mean, I will say that I do think, now, obviously, I'm not talking about like our families and close friends and this and that, but there are a lot of people out there that have no understanding of what it's like to have any type of illness or what you've been through. And that presents a whole other set of challenges when you're trying to advocate for yourself and be like, hey, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a tricky balance. Obviously, your friends, your family, and, those, that love you and so forth. Obviously, I mean, they know you, that you don't have any issues with that. But to the rest of the world, especially when you're working with different types of people,
Yeah.
it's difficult. And I mean, we're not going to get into every little thing. I could spend 3 hours talking to you because we can talk
Yeah.
about X, Y, and Z challenges that you had to deal with, being a Paralympic athlete and, qualifying and all of that. But it's not an easy course, to
Yeah. Yeah.
say the least. So it's very evident through your speaking as well as in your book. She's also on the board. I assume your dad is too. But your mom has played an integral part, especially with your growth and your development.
Yeah.
And to me, it's very special. I'm very close to my mom and also an only child. So it's a little bit different, but it's still like, it's a very special bond that you portray when you speak about her. And when you look at, your foundation website and videos and so forth, what lessons have you learned, from your mom through your recovery process and then also your growth and development?
Oh goodness, I could talk
There's
for
a
hours
lot.
about my
Give
mom.
me
Yeah.
two, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, and she's taught this to us since we were little. Both my parents were very much like, they never discouraged us when it came to these crazy dreams. Like I was 5 years old, I told my mom I was going to win a gold medal, and I drew an American flag on a swim cap. And she was like, all right, if you work hard, like we support you. And so I think the two biggest ones are the facts that, like, don't ever give up. I remember my mom, like that when I was in the middle of swimming and stuff, and I was getting so discouraged by coaches telling me not to go after this crazy dream. And she pulled over the car, and she pointed her finger at me, and she's like, don't you ever let someone tell you you can't do something. If you believe you can do it and you work hard at it and you give it your all, what do you have to lose? Like, don't let someone tell you you can't do something. You are capable of whatever, you're capable of anything and everything. And she goes, you didn't come this far to let someone tell you you can't do something. And so I think that's the biggest one, is like, believe in yourself. And it sounds so cheesy, but it's true. Like, don't let anyone dictate what you can and can't do, but work hard at it.
Mhm.
And then I think the other one is just have unshakable faith
Mhm.
that miracles will happen, that good will happen, that there's good in the world, that there's things to be grateful for. I think those are the two biggest lessons I've learned from my mom, is just, and a lot of third one. When the going gets tough, toughen up and get going.
Mhm.
When things are tough, yes, they're tough. You're tougher.
Well, absolutely. And yet life is not a straight line.
No, not at all.
It's not clearly, as you know, but I resonate with your mom quite a bit. But she sounds like a remarkable lady, and she is, just from also, and I don't know her at all, just from seeing her on all these, your videos, and her advocating, and being involved with your story. It's quite remarkable. And she really had the strength. I mean, your whole family did, but um
She's the heart and soul of all of our strength, for sure. Mhm.
that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Not everyone can be 100%, uh, you know, strong. And there's always, a leader, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And having your brothers, you're a triplet, and then you have another brother.
Yeah.
But them watching you, I mean, obviously you've overcome so much. They taught you, quote unquote, or not taught you, but once you came back into reality and started recovering, they were the ones that encouraged you to get back in the water.
Yeah.
uh and they must look up to you without, I mean, well, everyone does, but I'm just talking freely right now. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean, I think so. I think they always believed that I would come out of it. And they never treated me any differently, even when I'm laying there like unresponsive. They still talked to me normal. They still included me in everything. So for them, I'm Tor, I'm their sister, and they were just like, yeah, she's gonna be fine. And okay, Tor, we're gonna throw you in the car, we're gonna throw your wheelchair in the back, we're gonna go to a movie, and we're gonna, go swimming. And so for them, they just always believed, and they never once like ever let me say I couldn't do something or believe I couldn't do something.
right.
And so, and I look up to them, to be honest with you. I really look up to them. They're my best friends, obviously,
Or
but they're three of the most remarkable human beings I know. And they're people who I saw from such, gets me emotional talking about them, but I saw, like, when I was in that vegetative state, I saw how each of them handled it, and how they still did well in school. They still, were good people. They had every excuse in the world to be angry, to act out, to get bad grades, and they didn't. And they always had such positivity, resilience, like kindness. Their empathy and who they are, because of all that we've gone through, is just remarkable. And so we're even closer, obviously, but to see how they handled it in every crazy storm that came our way really inspired me, and continued to inspire me even in my recovery. And they kept me laughing, they kept it real, they kept it silly. I mean, I came out of this, you don't look like a swan when you come out of a vegetative state. And so I was in rough shape, and they still, my one brother came like, she's so beautiful. And I'm like laying there like, yes, I'm gorgeous, and just really, like really just believed, but never saw me any differently. And then even now, like obviously I have a very unique job and stuff, and they roast me on that, and but they're like they'll make fun of me and then go, "We're really proud of you, Tor. Like that was really cool," and so
Sure.
they're awesome. They're my best friends.
Course. No, it's nice that you have such a close family. No, it's just it's I mean your story is amazing, but it's just so nice to even hear just like how your family, and I'm specifically talking about your brothers right now, have watched you and they look up to you and as a source of inspiration. And I mean what you're doing is mind-boggling in a positive way, clearly, just in what you're like accomplishing and what you have accomplished. We clearly can't get through all your accomplishments, so I'm gonna have to cut it to a certain degree. But I mean, again, it's just amazing. So one of your mottos, which is also well, it's one of your mottos that you preach about. It's also, it's encompassed within your foundation, but is face it, embrace it, defy it, conquer it. Where did this motto come from? And how do you think it's, your presence, sharing your story, your foundation, which we're going to get into, is embracing this motto and creating change for others?
Yeah, so I came up with this motto when I was in my vegetative state and I was laying there and I was like, all right, I need to focus on something. And what that means, when challenges and obstacles come your way, you have to literally face it. You can't hide away from it. And when you face it, you have to embrace it, give it a big old hug. And then that ultimately helps you defy and conquer it. And so that became, my go-to saying. And then when we launched Victoria's Victory Foundation, that was kind of our motto too, is like, what, to our scholarship recipients, what is it that you want to face, embrace, defy, and conquer? And our foundation and the way we work and the people that we support, that's their focus. I want to face, embrace, defy, and conquer, be able to drive and go to school on my own, or go to the specialized therapy or have nursing care hours so I can have more independence, and so that's kind of the motto, is it's when challenges and obstacles come your way, you have to face it, embrace it, define and conquer it, but define what are you facing and what are you embracing, what are you defying, what are you conquering?
Absolutely. I think that's a great motto. I mean, I never have ever had a motto for myself, but it's really powerful and strong. And that's why the work that you're doing with Victoria's Victory Foundation, which we are going to get to, is doing the work and is, making strides, I think has part to do with that motto. All right, so we can't put aside the fact that yes, you're a gold medal, won tons of other silver medals with your swimming or athletic career as a Paralympian. You also were on Dancing with the Stars,
Mhm.
and then you're also a sports newscaster, broadcaster. I mean, just giving just a scope of this for ESPN. When you were little, I mean, you had all these dreams, which clearly is specifically outlined in your book, and also what you talk about. But I mean, there were days where you thought, this was it. I'm dying. Like, I don't want to live. You clearly flipped that and believed in God and religion, to help you get through your illness. But what does it mean to you from somebody that was like, oh, I want to be on Dancing with the Stars, at a young age, to, and being a swimmer, athlete, and all of that, to now like having accomplished all of that? That must like the euphoria or, the positive feelings from doing all of that must be quite remarkable.
Yeah, for sure. I think, but see, the thing about me is I'm such a goal getter that when I achieve one goal, I go after my next. So I'm trying to learn to have a little grace with myself and to take it in more. But I think with all of those, it was such a blur that there was, yeah, euphoric moments, but then it was like, okay, how else can I, what else can I do? But it was definitely cool. It's cool to It's honestly cool to, I made this crazy bucket list when I was really sick, and it's really cool to be able to check those things off and look back and be like, wow, I did that. That was cool,
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I mean, the people, I mean, your coaches, the people within the ESPN network, obviously the Paralympic Committee, even though there were some challenges. I mean, so many people believed in you. And it's, from the outside of your family and so forth. And so, to, make all of these accomplishments, I mean, definitely creates a high. It would create a high for me.
Well,
But
I
to
feel like
see,
a lot of people believed in me, but 10 times the amount of the people that believed in me didn't believe in me, and that fueled me to prove them wrong.
right. No, and yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, like you said, there were challenges, and you weren't you weren't convinced that, for instance, you'd be, on the spot, working for ESPN as a news broadcaster and interviewing Michael Phelps the first day. All right, so one more question, and then we're going to get into your foundation because I want to spend some time with that before we end. You wrote the book, or the memoir, I should say, Locked In: The Will to Survive, and the Resolve to Live, which will show right here.
Ta-da.
Yes, it's a great book. What, with writing it, what message are you trying to send to your readers about your story and just about challenges and, I should say, struggles, anyone can face?
I think really, yeah. I mean, I think that's the what encompasses this book is it doesn't matter what you're going through, just keep going and keep believing in that miracle. And I've been an expert when it comes to being at rock bottom, and so whatever rock bottom that is for people, like just remember you have to keep climbing. And so I think the biggest message honestly is that the toughest climbs have the prettiest views, but you just have to keep climbing.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And you specifically talk about that within your book, about, the climbs and, the mountains, but, there is that peak
Yeah.
where everything is quote unquote beautiful. It's very poetic in a lot of ways.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So the big, one of the other exciting things of what you're doing is, so you have your foundation, like we've talked about, called Victoria's Victory Foundation. What was the inspiration to start it, and what is the mission of your foundation?
So the inspiration, honestly, I mean, we as a family were very fortunate to have, my family kind of all rally around us, and we had really good insurance, and so we were able to have the support modalities and everything. But as I got better, we had all this leftover equipment, so we started donating it. And then just in our area alone, there was one woman who hadn't been out of bed in years that we gave her, this obviously more chair for someone who's more compromised. So this woman, she was able to get out of the house. Her family could take her outside, and so we started to kind of see this need. And we had opened up Project Walk Boston, which is a paralysis recovery center that I learned to walk at. And people that would come in, it was nursing care hours they needed. It was the proper wheelchairs they needed. It was adaptive equipment. Like it was things that all of us should all have the opportunity to have that they didn't have. And so it was really, I saw just such a need. And I also was kind of like, I was given the second chance for a reason. I need to make it worth that while. And so really coming together and doing it to help other families like ours and other people who are struck with disabilities and conditions that cause deficits and mobility challenges, and give them the wings to fly. And so what we do, we have the Victory Scholarship Program, and people can apply. And whether it's nursing care hours, wheelchair, adaptive equipment, like those are all things that people can apply for and find. And we kind of say, what is your victory? What do you want to achieve? And how can we, be the wings to help you and be a resource to, because you feel very alone, especially when you're struck with a disability or when you're dealt with this. They don't give you a manual for this.
Yeah.
So trying to be a support system as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so where do you get this equipment? Clearly funding, but do you, and, how do you gauge what type of equipment you get? Or does it all kind of depend upon, I mean, clearly there's overlap with each person. There's more than one person that's need a wheelchair or that's,
Yeah.
needs some type of walking device. I can't even name them all. But, do you go by, like, for instance, with your scholarship program, do you go case by case?
Case by case. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have partners that we work with and stuff, or we'll team up with other nonprofits as well, depending on the area, but it's a case by case basis.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so what other programs do you employ? You have the scholarship program. Are there any other programs that you're either working on, or that you also facilitate?
Our scholarship programs are a big one. That's kind of the umbrella. We do have dreams and goals to branching out of that, but we have really built up our scholarship program, and that seems to be where the biggest need is.
Mhm.
And so we really want to, I feel like before we jump in, I have huge goals and ideas and things I want to do, but I think before we almost outstretch ourselves, like this is where people get their life back. This is where people who have gotten scholarships, who have gotten better, who have improved. So that's really our focus right now. I mean, we do have plans. I mean, we're still a relatively young foundation
Sure.
in the foundation world, but we have bigger plans. But right now our scholarship program is where the biggest need is, and so getting people to donate and kind of become part of our monthly calendar club,
Mhm.
and where we can kind of have more donations, like steady donations coming in, so that we can have more scholarships granted.
Right. And I guess what's important, I think unique about the scholarship program, which you can talk about a little bit, is the fact that, you talk about, well, somebody make X donation, let's just say $100, 250, that gets, you're covering X type of service or equipment uh, to X individual. So can you talk a little bit more about that? And I guess like kind of the different levels and, kind of just a range because equipment costs, I mean, specifically equipment costs all different types of amounts.
Yeah, so we
Thousands and thousands. And then also, I mean, I was also fortunate where I didn't necessarily have to suffer for, support services because there is a financial burden. But then also, the support services you do offer.
Yeah, so we unfortunately with COVID we weren't able to have our big, annual fundraisers,
Me
but
either.
we really set up our calendar club, which is people can choose a day of the month and do a monthly donation. And for some it's like it could be $20 a month. That $20 you multiply that turns into a lot that we can do with it. And so I think it for that, I mean, like $100 could get someone 1 hour of specialized training or nursing care, or so it really a little does go a long way if you kind of compound it all together. And we on our Instagram and our website we kind of break it down, like, look, this donation could get this amount or this or this or that. And so we were very like, and it's been interesting because like I've had friends who have donated, be like, wow, I had no idea, like that could go here, that could go there. And a lot of my friends have signed up for the calendar club, and where it is like 25 dollars a month, and they don't even think about it. They're like, they sign up for it, it's $25 and that's it. You know what I mean? So it's getting creative with that, because that's really how we're able to fund scholarships. But equipment ranges, like there's a huge need, and we want to be able to say yes to everyone. We're not there yet, but we're gonna get there where we can say yes to every need
Or
and want.
Yeah, no, I mean, it takes a village also. I mean, like I started Different Enable in 2018. We're in what 2021. We didn't have our annual fundraiser this year. I didn't want to do something virtual. I just felt like that wasn't necessary and too
Yeah.
much. And we do have limited funds as well, but or we do have limited funds. But like we're all still young. It takes, it's not easy to build
Yeah.
up a foundation overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
So you also, with your mom, you spoke a little bit about this, opened up Project Walk Boston. Now, how do you incorporate Project Walk with your foundation and its goals and the scholarship program?
They're separate.
They're completely separate.
They're
Okay.
completely separate. We're separate entities.
Okay.
But Project Walk, in order to get it open, on time, it's a business. But my mom donates a ton of hours anyways because that's who she is. But they're completely separate entities. So like there's our facility where people come and train, but the foundation is we're all across the country helping people.
Okay. But with, and I actually, I did understand that, but with Project Walk, like, do you offer training sessions, that are part of obviously the victories and, the money that you raise with the foundation? Like, is there any like crossover between that, or do you really just keep them completely separate?
We do our best to keep them
Okay.
separate, but if there have been folks whose funds have run out, and they have applied for scholarships and gotten scholarships,
Right.
but it's limited for sure because obviously my mom and I are very conscientious. We want to keep them separate. But there's been cases where folks have gone to other project walks across the country,
Right.
their specialized training. So if that's their scholarship need and they have, they've run out of funds and they meet the requirements, then we can grant that scholarship as well. It's a case by case basis, but we do emphasize the fact that they are separate entities. But there is sometimes crossover where someone will come and they're out of state and they're like, hey, I've reached this amount on my funds. Like I want to keep my training hours going, or I need a couple more sessions, and so it really just depends.
Mhm. No,
Mhm.
I mean, and everything like we just spoke about is case by case basis. I mean,
Yeah.
no one case is the same. And
Yeah.
I give doctors a lot of credit because there's a lot of different, problem solving and abstract thinking that
Yeah.
needs to go involved. I mean, that needs to be involved when it comes to health issues. So I'm sure there's a lot, but is there any one or two victories of a person or a family that you've helped that has really has stood out to you, and is making great strides because of the work you do and have given them?
Yeah, I mean,
There's so many, I know.
one. Um, I mean,
Or just in general, I guess maybe talk
yeah. So
about them.
I think there's been so many major strides that our victory scholarships have made, and our victory scholarship recipients have had. And so I think seeing those is really special. I really don't ever want to just pick one because I've there's been so many of them, and I also am just like, I'm proud of everyone. I'm proud of all the people we get to help. But my favorite part, honestly, is getting those letters back where families find out they've gotten their scholarship, or we see them, there's been quite a few kids who have gone to specialized care, early intervention, like more intense PT and OT and speech therapies, and have gotten mobility back, have gotten, can walk better in their walker. And so it's setting such a strong foundation for those kids, whether they're going into kindergarten or first grade or wanting to set those developments in motion. That's really cool. That always kind of is like my soft spot. And I feel like also, and we have had quite a few kiddos who have done that. And we have a ton of videos on Instagram too that make me cry all the time. And then there's teens. There's been people who have had transverse myelitis like me that are making improvements, that are standing up again, that are trying to take steps. And so I think to really answer your question, there's not just one. I think it's every single person we get to help is like the coolest thing in the world. It never gets old. It never, I never sit there and be like, that's my favorite story. I always sit there and I'm like,
Yeah,
this is
there's
so
a
cool.
lot.
Yeah.
And no, and I kind of just meant like something that stands out because I mean it's difficult to kind of pick and choose, and it's also like quote unquote unfair. But sometimes there's ones that just stand out. But I mean, you also do so many. I mean, you see on the website, there's and
We
there's
have a lot. We have a
yeah,
lot. I think the kids I always have a soft spot for the little kiddos that we're able to help.
sure. and then
Yeah,
I
I
see
think
you and be like, "Oh my goodness, that's Victoria." Like, and I can just see from the videos that, when you go and see, people like with what you're doing, and even, I know it's separate, but Project Walk, it's like, oh my goodness. It's, like I said, it's amazing. So we'll wrap this up, but what uh, this is a very overreaching question, but what type of advice or lessons would you um, preach, quote unquote, or tell others who are really struggling? And I'm talking about struggling to a debilitating point where you were, even to the point where you thought, oh no, like I don't want to live, because that's serious.
yeah.
Uh, and, how did you, and I guess you can incorporate this into the question, how did you stay so positive?
I wasn't always positive. I think I'm human. There
Or
was moments where I was like, this is not going to end well, or I don't want to do this anymore. But I think here's the thing. What really, really helped me and continues to help me, even when I start to get stressed or overworked or burnt out, is take time every single day to think about what you have to be grateful for. And when I was in the most painful part of the vegetative state, the part where every night, my eyes would close. I'm like, they're not going to open up again. I started to list things I had to be grateful for. And I would start my day every day with things I had to be grateful for. And there was, by definition, given the situation I was in, there wasn't a lot. Like people would sit there and be like, what? Like and I was like, well, I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm able to think. I'm able to kind of have these self-evaluating thoughts. And so when you shift your focus to gratitude, it actually shifts your perspective and it creates hope. Hope that things could get better, and hope that things, that your story won't end in defeat. And when you take that hope and you mix in a lot of hard work, anything is possible. And that's where the miracles happen. That's where those moments that you never, expected would ever come. And so I think honestly, gratitude is that attitude you have to adapt to, even if you're in the worst possible situation. Trust me, I've been there. I'm like a frequent flyer at rock bottomville. There are always things to be grateful for. And so when you do that, it completely changes everything.
That's really good advice. I think gratitude is the one piece of, quote unquote, like tools you should have in your toolbox, quote unquote.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, gratitude is, it leads to so many open doors, as crazy as that may sound. And it could,
True.
you could be grateful for, eating a meal, or, it could be something so basic as you said,
The other
or
day,
just
it
being
was so windy
alive.
here. Yeah, like it was so windy here.
Right.
And I was like, I'm so grateful. I have a home. I have a sweater. Like I have, I was like so grateful for that.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. You're amazing, Victoria. I hope to meet you one day.